There was an interesting debate on Twitter over the weekend about what was Colby ever elite? Was he ever elite, Brian? I have a few
Yes.
thoughts I'd like to
Yes,
share.
he was.
What would at his peak? What would make him elite?
Even though he was largely one-dimensional, and even though the biggest wins that propelled him to stardom did come against aging names that were on the other side of the hill, Robbie Lawler would be a big example of that. For example, he was able to weaponize the combination of his stamina, his forward pressure, and his wrestling to a very elite level where he was a problem. He could drown people. And I think I still give him a ton of credit for his performance toe-to-toe on the feet in the first Usman title fight that felt like a pick'em fight going into that final round, and he ultimately had his jaw broken and was stopped. But the limitations of that one-dimensional sort of aura around him, I never thought were going to make him age all that well. So was he elite? I think you have to say for a season he was. He went in there against the champion and gave him all he could handle twice. I mean, that rematch with Usman was also close and competitive. But he wasn't great enough to get over that hill. He wasn't well-rounded enough to be a high-level pound-for-pound guy at his very peak. He was what he was, a title-contending for a season elite fighter who propelled his shtick and persona to probably more fame than his skills allowed. But I don't think we should say anything more than that.
I think that's maybe close to being right. His best win is probably somewhere between the Dong Hyun Kim win
RDA?
and the Robbie Lawler win. I know he won the interim title, obviously defeating RDA, but RDA kind of a blown-up lightweight, very skilled, but a blown-up lightweight. But the Demi and Maya fight, he kind of got pieced up on the feet a little bit on that one, overall winning. Zane Simon had a good analysis over the weekend saying if you looked at what Colby represented at the time he was at his peak, he had one of these really intensive labor styles where he could just throw a lot of volume at you, a ton of cardio, a ton of wrestling, a ton of position dominance, a ton of, pitter-patter shots, but volume in that sense. The Robbie Lawler fight is kind of the peak of that. But, I mean, this is a guy who traded friendships, traded relationships, traded business entanglements for an identity that he had banked on using this volume striking, this volume attacking kind of thing. And then I'm just going to burn every bridge and then use the light of these flames to gain attention for myself. But it actually never really worked in the end. He didn't get nearly far enough.
Well, I can argue it worked when you consider, what did he headline, 3 pay-per-views? Like, that's not nothing.
Well, he was gifted title shots. I can certainly agree with that. But I'm saying he doesn't really have a signature win.
Sure.
He didn't ever become champion. He was an interesting foil that people wanted to root against, which has some value. But I think looking back on his career, there is a question about whether he was elite. I think he was for a very brief moment in time.
Isn't it very similar to Chael's resume and legacy
Right,
in a
but
sense?
here's the difference
where
between...
you're noted for being the trash-talking B-side in competitive title fights, but you never got over the hump.
Right, but let's talk about the differences between Colby and Chael. Chael did many of the things, and of course was walking him out, cornering him, consoling him after the fight, which I thought...
It was a little weird to see that, even though I know that they were close.
Yeah.
I wasn't shocked that they were friendly. It was weird to see him as the head trainer.
The difference is that Chael found a way over time to endear himself to the fan base. Following UFC 245, Colby blamed Mark Goddard being un-American.
Yeah.
He blamed an uneven calling of the fouls in that fight that were just totally made up. Following UFC 268, he accused Kamaru Usman of cheating, of the judges not liking his conservative values. Following the Leon Edwards loss, he blamed a mysterious foot ailment and then high-altitude poisoning, as well as campaigning with Donald Trump. He has made any number of excuses for poor performance when he was actually tested against some of the very best guys in his division. That is the exact opposite of what Chael Sonnen did. Chael Sonnen, no. Chael Sonnen showed up to press conferences, and if he got his ass whooped, would say he got his ass whooped by a better guy. And
he's also undefeated. I just wanted to add that, okay?
Okay, but he almost does that in sort of a comical shtick.
Yes, I guess.
This guy, slams the character of anyone who doesn't work in service to his big, stupid lies. And that is not only off-putting, it kind of shows you what the real subtle difference is between him and a guy who understands audience manipulation in all its various forms. This dude can only light fires. He can only be an arsonist. Chael was an arsonist and a firefighter at the same time, and that is, to me, a pretty significant difference in the end. You just do not have this cornucopia of every... I mean, dude, if you... I can't even get into it. You get the idea. there is a gigantic difference between the
Yeah.
two. Not so much how the competitive career itself on the resumes turned out, but how they were received because how they handled it, and then what that bought them down